Sì, we can understand, we can listen Spanish and Italian. Thank you for our translators today, Silvia and Maria Giovanna, grazie mille. We also have with us Gianluca and Florence as the technical team, helping us with this amazing Zoom. We are already 549 of us, so it's great. We also have Sister Lynn with us. We'll give it 1 or 2 more minutes and then we'll start. And if you have anything that it's not working, please put it on the chat. And I will invite everyone to write the place where you are from, where you are attending from on the chat, please. So we can have a little bit of a shower of the places where you are, please. So London, thank you. Rome, Colombia, Mexico, Brussels, Dublin, Budapest. Oh, this is going too quick. Mexico, Vietnam, Singapore. I don't want to be accustomed to this miracle of the technical world that allows us to be together from so different parts of the world. South Africa, Tanzania, India, Dublin. Thank you so much. Toronto, Canada, Indonesia, Quito, Ecuador, Argentina. Oh, these people have woke up very, very early in the morning. Thank you so much. Malta, Senegal, Nigeria, Angola, but being from Peru, that's beautiful. Guatemala, Philippines, Namibia, Burkina Faso, Vietnam, Zimbabwe, Ireland. I'm just trying to highlight the ones I haven't said before. Kenya, Nicaragua. We pray for you. We are with you in these challenging moments. Pakistan, Uganda, Mexico, Albania, Chile, Macau. Bom dia, Macau. Thailand. Okay, so we have so many different places from the whole world. Thank you so much for being with us. As well, I'd like to say hello to the people that are following us through the YouTube channel. In English, in Italian, in Spanish. Hello, Haiti, Australia. My goodness, thank you so much for writing on the chat. Spain, Poland, thank you. Thank you so much for being with us. So it's already time, and I think we need to start because the theme that brings us today, it's very, very, very important. So I'm just going to say some words of introduction, and then I will pass it on to Sister Lynn. So the theme of today, as you've seen and received and registered, is tools to accompany new members in the congregation in an emerging reality. I'm sure that all of us recognize that accompanying new members is a challenge, both for the people who join our communities, who are younger than we are, but also for us, older ones that welcome them. And always the generations that are younger are always a challenge for the older ones, has always been like this. But at the same time, it's an opportunity. And we need to face that as a big possibility of growing, both for them and for us. And we need to acknowledge that more so is in our time, where change happens at a very, very high pace. And I think we all struggle somehow in keeping up with all the different challenges that we faced lately in the world scene, and also in our lives, in our congregations, and all the questions we have when we come to meet people from other younger generations. But consecrated life needs to keep up. We need to let go of old things that don't work anymore and embrace with wisdom and discernment new ways of being, new ways of living as consecrated people. This needs from us an ongoing formation, new skills, new learnings, an openness of heart, and as well a huge trust in God's grace that will always, always accompany us. So on this note, today we will be focused on the accompaniment as a mindset and how to learn and create trusting environments. And if the time helps us, we will also look at empowering new members to be themselves, trying to offer them a psychological safety. And so we will be led by Sister Lynn Levo. She will be, she's already with us. We'll be led by her. We are in good hands. And I would like to say some words about her with her extended curriculum. So she's a sister of St. Joseph of Carondelet. She's a licensed psychologist, lecturer, and consultant, and received her PhD from the University of New York at Albany, and completed her clinical training at University of Kansas School of Medicine. She has presented nationally and internationally to both women and men religious, seminaries, and many other realities in our church and in our world. Her desire is to foster healthy, integrated sexuality, celibacy, relationships of intimacy, and mutuality in community. So she wants to help that to happen. And she's done that in multiple intercommunity novitiates, engaging with young adults, emerging adults from various cultures. She's also shared her knowledge with many conferences of religious, mainly in the United States and worldwide. So the Religious Formation Conference and also the National Religious Vocation Conference, both of them have given her an award for her work and her commitment to this cause. She is a consulting psychologist in private practice, offers consultation and presentations and workshops, and as you will see, both in the States and abroad, and here on Zoom. So, Sister Lynn, I'm really pleased to welcome you, and over to you.
I'm really happy to be with you, and I'd like to thank Sister Paula and UISG for this opportunity to share some insights, some of my learnings, and to offer also some tools to help you in whatever role you're in. I know there are leaders listening and formation persons, etc. So we really want to be able to accompany new members and to be able to welcome them. Our future depends on it. And so as Paula suggested, in these days, we will look at various topics, and hopefully the three today are accompaniment, creating a trusting environment, and psychological safety. To begin, I'd like to offer just a few words of introduction, and then you will see on the screen how I will be opening up the topics, and you'll be able to follow and listen. I think, sisters, we as women religious have a tremendous opportunity to create an environment for the activity of God to flourish, for the good of our communities and for the good of the world. What do our newer members need at this time? I think we need to understand how they are really in need of a future to believe in. And they need us to be excited and engaged and discerning with them our future. And so our conversations, how we are with them, becomes critical. They have been touched, these new members, by the call of God, and we need to understand their call as we invite them to understand our communities, our histories, our charisms. They are also in need to be quite self-reflective and to know how to be themselves and also how to transcend a self so that they can be of service to the world. They need to be broadly educated. And you will see how we're going to be looking at that as we talk about it. Broadly educated, prepared intellectually, spiritually, and psychologically to live in a very complex world. And finally, I would suggest as we begin to open up this conversation that they and we need to be at home with diversity. This is not a time for sameness. This is a time of embracing difference, as Pope Francis has talked about when he talks about communion. And so our communities need to be places of welcome, of hospitality, of communion, and that where we foster belonging, which is such a critical need for young people. So I want to talk about mindset for a moment, and then we're going to move into talking about accompaniment as a mindset. When I talk about mindset, I'm talking about a set of beliefs that shape how I make sense of myself and the world around me. So mindset influences how I think, how I feel, and how I behave. And so, sisters, we have to ask ourselves personally and as a group, what is our mindset? Do we have a fixed mindset? This is the way life is, and it's going to be this way, and we're just going to continue as it is. Is it a fixed mindset? And when we have a fixed mindset, we can be self-protecting with our questions and our behaviors because we want to keep things as they are. I don't think that's our call, to have a fixed mindset. This is the way it is, you know? I think we need to have a growth mindset, that God is with us, inviting us to a new future, which we don't exactly know what it's going to look like. But I'm trusting in this God that the future is evolving and we will see it as it comes in its bits and pieces. And finally, sisters, we don't want to have an unconscious mindset. We have no understanding of what's happening and where we are. So I'm inviting us to have a growth mindset, a growth mindset. This is a time for the future, that what is happening around us, to us, is a challenge and an opportunity to be something new, to be an emerging reality. So with that mindset, one of the first things I invite you to think about, and you're seeing it on your screen, is journeying with new members with accompaniment as a different mindset. Sisters, this is a new time in religious life. These are new members. They are not younger versions of us. They have a different experience of life and the world around them. They are living in a different world. And so how we work with them, how we encourage them, how we walk with them cannot be the same as we did when you and I entered just a couple of years ago, right? Just a couple of years ago. You know, we really are talking about a new time and a way of walking with. So I'd like to suggest that we think about accompaniment as a mindset. And I'd like to talk about, what does accompaniment look like? What do we mean by accompaniment? And you want to be asking yourself, if I understand accompaniment as we're talking about it, how will I choose to be different in my relationship with newer members? How will I choose to be different in my relationship? I think typical questions, I work with a lot of persons who are accompanying new members, and I work with a lot of new members. So I talk with them every year, more than every year, you know. And so some typical questions as we journey into the future. How best to walk with new members? What is the role of the persons asked by the community, and that's many of you, to journey with new members? What is your role? What will best assist or help new members to be living in an emerging reality? Sisters, what is coming is not clear. The world is changing rapidly. And so is accompaniment, walking in the company of others, a better fit, a better way to think about your role, whether you're in leadership or in the actual walking with? Is that a better way than thinking about you being a formator or a director? So notice the shift in language. Are we really forming people? Are we really directing people? Or are we accompanying them so that they discover more fully who they are and how God is inviting them to be a member of your community and to live your charism for the sake of the world? And so, sisters, for me, I think forming, directing are words that indicate certain ways of behaving that I don't think are going to be helpful as we go forward. So what do I mean by accompaniment? What does accompaniment look like? How might it be different than directing and forming? And I think that's the invitation I would like you to think about today. Is accompaniment a more helpful way to think about our journeying with new members? And perhaps we can, because we're in this great Easter season, we can think about Jesus himself and the journey with the two on their way to Emmaus, because he accompanied them. And as a result, they came to see him in a very different way. So I don't think we're in bad company here. We're in good company with Jesus himself. So what do we mean by accompaniment? And if we look at the root of the word, acompañamiento is compañero or friend, drawing from the Latin ad cum panis, to break with another. Now, I'm not suggesting that you be their friend, that we're not going to talk. You do have a role. You are not their friend. You are someone who accompanies them. But I do think it is so important that we understand that to accompany is to go somewhere with her, to break bread together. And probably the most important thing in this introduction is to be present to her, to them on their journey. And their journey, their personal journey, interacts or intersects with our communal journey. It is their personal journey and their journey with us that you are accompanying. And one of the best gifts you can give is to be present to them as you walk with them. So being present is so critical. And that's the gift you give. And the skills we will talk about today and tomorrow are ways of being present so that you can understand more fully who they are and help them to understand who we are. Who are we as a congregation? How is our journey becoming their journey? I think there's an element of mystery here. Why this person? Why she comes to your congregation? Why religious life at this point in her life? She doesn't have to choose religious life. In many places of the world, they have other options, and yet they're choosing to come and explore. there is an element of openness on our part. Who is this person and why is she coming? And trust, which is going to be a major important topic that we talk about next, that really them trusting us and our trusting them becomes critical if we're going to talk about accompanying. Sisters, they need to let us know who they are and how God is inviting them. They will not let us know who they are if they don't trust us. So trust becomes a major, major important task. You know, it requires time and commitment to be able to be present. And so, you know, spending time with each of these new persons and committing ourselves to walking alongside them, to understanding who they are. And so, sisters, I think one of the changes in accompaniment, as opposed to directing, is that it involves a dialogue, a dialogical relationship where we invite conversation and we spend more time listening than talking. It doesn't mean we don't talk or we don't share our life, our charism, expectations. All of that is part of the journey because they need to know who we are. But sisters, if it's a dialogue, there has to be a tremendous opportunity for us to listen and for them to speak, or we won't know who they are. And so they may act as if things are fine, but we have no idea of what's really happening within them. So a dialogical relationship. Pope Francis is talking about a dialogical relationship. That is the synodal process. The synod is a dialogical process. If Pope Francis is inviting the world to be in dialogue, we must be inviting a dialogue with our newer members, and they will then understand the synodal process even more. And so listening and then also witnessing, we need to witness to our own journey, sharing with them our own journey or the community's journey. And we need to be able to offer what we call specific and flexible support. Support doesn't mean do this, don't do this. It means asking them, what is it they need? How can we be helpful to them? And it won't look the same for each person. Each of the members, if you have more than one person joining you in a particular year, they have a unique journey. And so one may need a little bit more time to reflect, and another one may need a little bit more encouragement to answer questions, and another one may need something else. So what does support look like becomes a significant question for you. They are not all the same, just as we are not all the same. In addition, I think accompaniment asks us to be being present in a different kind of way. I think, sisters, we're not there to control, to fix, or to manage, or to intervene. Let me think about those words for a minute. We're not there to control them. We're there to invite them to our life. And when we invite them to our life, we invite them to choose certain ways of behaving, coming to prayer, being respectful, being open, being self-disclosing. Those are all invitations. You can't control people, and we can't fix them. You know, I think they might make some mistakes. I don't know about you, but I've made a few. You know, anybody made a few mistakes, you know? And so if they make a mistake, we want to help them understand why it might not have been the best choice, but we can't fix them. We can't control them. We're not here to intervene when they have a difficulty, or they're struggling with their prayer life or with their relationships. We want them to talk to us about their struggles, and then we can invite them to look at things a bit differently or try something else. But sisters, this is not a top-down relationship. This is not a hierarchy where and you're going to tell them what to do. Really, we're talking about a horizontal relationship. I'm not saying you don't have a role, and I'm not saying that you are equal to them. You sisters, by the very fact that you're a professed member and that you are in a leadership role in whatever role you're in a power position with them. You have something to say about their life. But what we're talking about here is imparting to them that you want to walk with them and that you will help them if they let you know who they are, if they interact with you in an open, self-disclosing way. And so it's not that there's not a difference in a relationship. You're not their friend, you're not their equal, but you want to be there with them so that they are open and sharing with you in a really healthy way. And so when we talk about accompaniment, we're really talking about rooted in what I would like to suggest as an interdependent understanding of what it means to be a human person. I'm going to say that again because it's critical. This whole notion of walking with accompaniment is rooted in an interdependent understanding of what it means to be a human person and what it means to be able to live in community in a good way or in a healthy way. I'm not encouraging individualism. I am encouraging being your authentic self. But to be an authentic human person means to be in relationship with others. And so we're going to be talking about a relational life. Sisters, no one can live a healthy human life by themselves. So interdependence, needing each other, is what we want to foster. And so it's a kind of a little bit of a paradoxical, be yourself and be in relationship. Be yourself and be in relationship. This is what we are fostering. And one of the relationships is with you, the formator, the person who is in charge, who has the role of accompaniment. Sisters, I often work with novices. I work with a lot of novices every year. And I say to them, when I try to invite them to interdependence, here's how I say it. I can't be me without you. And you can't be you without me. Let me say that again. I say to them how much they need each other, and they need the person who's accompanying them, and they need other members of the community. So I say to them, I can't be me. I can't be my best self without you. And you can't be your best self without me. So we are fostering, sisters, a relational life. And accompaniment, I think, is a way that we can help them move past being focused only on themselves and to be in relationship. And so here's where we talk about their need to be open to dialogue. Open to dialogue. That our life is a life of conversation. And their conversation, their dialogue needs to be with you. And it also needs to be with spiritual directors and with each other. So we're encouraging at the very beginning of their religious life, we are encouraging them learning how to accompany one another. Sisters, they're not always going to have a superior. They're not always going to have a formation. They're going to live a religious life where they need to learn to accompany each other. But the way to learn that begins here in these earlier stages of religious life. So it's the needs of the individual person that we want to be able to help, and the community. So we're talking about the needs of the individual and the community. And they emerge by living together. And it's a very important, the word respect becomes critical here. That we be respectful and thoughtful of how we interact with them. Now, they're going to come with different ideas. They're going to come with, not understanding some things. They're going to make mistakes, but respecting them where they are on their journey and helping them to mature becomes critical. And I'm going to talk about respect again when I talk about creating an environment that is safe. Sisters, we need to have a safe place. Our communities need to be places of safety so that they can share with us whatever is in their mind and heart. Whatever is in their mind and heart. And so safety is something I'm going to be talking about, perhaps as we finish today. And so, sisters, we talk about what does accompaniment look like? What are some of the skills? What are some of the practices that you and I need to get better at when we accompany, when we walk with? First of all, it requires time. And that means time individually, with the person, and time with a particular group, so time. And we have to be able to relax and spend time with. The schedule cannot be so tight or so, now we do this, and in 10 minutes we do this, and in this, there's no time to be without something going on. Sisters, your structure in the different levels of accompaniment, there needs to be space in the structure. You can't have everything, one thing followed by another, where there's no space. And so we have to relax a little with the structure and not impose a very rigid structure. I think it requires commitment on your part, commitment to being in relationship with them in this more open way. It requires openness on your part to learn, and that's a very important sentence, openness to learn. Who is this person? Where does she come from? Why is she here with us? What does she bring to the community that the community needs? So openness. Sisters, this is a new time and a new place. God is sending them to us to show us something. So I ask, what is God trying to show us with this new member? What does she bring that we need to hear? And then we talk about, as I said, a willingness to learn and the ability to negotiate with them. Sisters, they may need a little more time. You're ready to move on. You're to talk about something else that you think is important for them to know. And they're having questions. They have questions. They say, I don't understand. And you do not want to lose patience when they say, I don't understand. You want to say, okay, they don't understand. Let me go back and say that in another way. They're not trying to be difficult. They really want to understand. So can we slow down? Can we give them more time if they have questions? It doesn't mean you made a mistake. It simply means they are trying to be who they are. I think it also requires reflecting on relationships as they change. At the very beginning, when they come to us, they don't understand religious life often. They understand something, but they don't. So we teach a little more, we invite a little bit more. But as they live with us, as they spend time with us, perhaps it is time to change our relationship with them so we're not as directive. We're not as telling them what to do, but we let them make some more choices as they walk with us. I think it requires on our part patience, and patience because everyone is not at the same place. I'd encourage a sense of humor. Sisters, some of what they ask or some of what they may do, we just need to learn to lighten up and to laugh a little. They think you meant this and you meant something else. We don't need to be angry or frustrated. Simply need to say, oh, well, they interpreted that a little bit differently. Let's go back. Let's kind of understand how they understood that. Let's make some adjustments. I think, sisters, to listen without judgment is critical. To listen without judgment. Sisters, I think we are more judgmental than we need to be. Judgment does not help anybody learn anything. I think the whole question of judgment, someone makes a mistake and then we say, she did that because, or she doesn't care about others, or she doesn't care about the community, or she's only interested in herself. Those are judgments. They do not help. So let me encourage this. We want to look at behavior. And if a person behaves poorly, they make a not good choice, you want to talk to them about their behavior and help them see a better choice. You don't want to talk to them about why, because why often includes your judgment. You didn't help do the dishes because you're selfish. Wow. Sisters, why are we talking about a judgment of being selfish? The behavior, she didn't help with the dishes. Let's talk to her about not helping doing the dishes. Let's talk about where she was at when she didn't help with the dishes. Stay away from why and judgment. It helps no one. And to be truthful, you really don't know why. You're guessing. So stay with behavior, not with judgments. They don't help. I think, sisters, we need to understand boundaries better than ever before. Boundaries. You and the persons you accompany are not at the same level. You're not friends. And so you have a relationship with them, and there is a difference between you as a professed sister who has a role and each of your sisters on this journey of becoming a member of your community. And so, be mindful that you are one of the community members. You live in community with them, and you're not exactly the same with them. But that does not mean you're better than. You simply have a role that is very important for you to play. And you always need to remember that you are an agent of the community. You are there as an agent of the community, a person who helps bring new members into the community. And therefore, you are not on an equal plane with them. That does not mean you don't live with them in a healthy way. And finally, I said we really need to think about ethical judgments, that you helping them is really important, but you don't act for them. You really help them to be who they are called to be, while you are being who you're called to be. I think a couple other things are helpful when we talk about this mindset of accompaniment. Sisters, when you walk this closely with anyone, with your professed sisters that are your friends, it could be a family member, but certainly when you walk with these newer members, you experience their pain and struggle. And you can't help but be impacted by their strain, their stress, their pain, their struggle. So you feel for them. You experience, I've had novices where one of their parent dies while they're in the novitiate. Oh, what a challenging experience to lose a parent. And so the pain, the loss, their struggle is you can't ignore. At the same time, you don't want to be telling them what to do or solving issues that they may have. So we notice, we understand, we are empathic, we can see how it impacts their life. At the same time, we don't do this, don't do this. Rather, we say to them, how will you deal with this? We need to help them figure out how to live with a loss. We don't tell them how. We can make some suggestions, when you lose someone who's significant in your life, it's a time of grief, a time of sadness. So we help them find a way. We help them find a way. We don't tell them. And we certainly don't say things like, get over it. It's been 6 months since your parent died. It's time to move on. So the sensitivity of walking with, helping them find a way. And that means you have to have some understanding of what it's like to deal with loss and grief. You have to have done your own work. And finally, sisters here, I think when you accompany another person and you hear their story and you're walking with them, you become aware of your own story much more profoundly. Much more profoundly. You realize that you too have had losses. You too have suffered. Perhaps suffered from someone not understanding what you were saying. And so it becomes critical when you become aware of something in your own life that is brought up by something in the person you're accompanying's life, that you realize you are now dealing with something personal and that you need to seek accompaniment, not from the people you are accompanying, but from someone outside of the formation area who you can trust and they can help you. Sharing your personal journey when you need some accompaniment with the people you accompany is totally inappropriate. And you cross boundaries. So sisters, the final thing I would offer here is, who is helping you? Who is accompanying you? Who are the people in your life that you can talk to about your questions, your challenges, your, difficulties? Who do you talk to? And that requires that you have people in your life that you can trust, that you can talk to. And sisters, one final comment here. If one of your struggles is with a member of the group you're accompanying, you cannot talk to another sister in your own community. You cannot do that, because if you talk about a novice, for example, or a candidate to a person in your own community, they do not have the right to that information. And so, sisters, here's where we need to work among each other, among congregations. We need to be able to have people we can talk to outside of our congregations to get a better understanding. And so, sisters, your members that you accompany, you cannot talk about them within the community and then expect people to not make judgments or later on forget the information that you shared. So who's accompanying you? Spiritual directors, a sister from another community whom you trust. A person like myself, I accompany novice directors, candidate directors. They'll call me up and we talk and are able to, I'm able to help them sort out something. So accompaniment is something we all need. Final thing, have a personal life, sisters. Have a personal life. Do not make accompaniment your life. You need balance in your life. You need time away from the women you accompany. You need friends. Do not make your role your life. And that includes the leaders who are listening. Leadership cannot be your life. You need a life, a relational life, where you can be yourself, a life where you can seek help if you need it. And I'm going to end with one final word: balance, balance, balance. You need a life that is balanced. You cannot have a life that the only thing you do is accompany others. And so I'd like to end this section with a couple of reflection questions. And sisters, because we have so many people who've joined us, there is no time for a real dialogue at this point, and which is unfortunate in one way, and also it's a gift in other ways that we have so many people listening. But here's some questions for you to think about. Does this understanding of accompaniment change how you look at your role, whatever your role is, a leadership role, someone in formation, or whatever? Which of these ideas is difficult for you to consider? You're saying, I don't think I could do that, or I don't know if I agree with that. Which of these ways of living with accompanying encourages you or supports you to be the best accompanier you can be? And so, sisters, everything we talk about is for you to take home. By the way, we will send you handouts. You will get a copy of what I'm sharing. That will come at the end of our time together, okay? So you will have my reflections. What you're seeing on the screen, you'll get a copy of. So I'm going to pause for a moment there and just simply say, there's some things for you to think about when we're not together. You might look at that list and put a little check mark next to the one that you think is the most important for you to think more about. I'd like to do part 2, which is a second conversation. I think when we talk about creating a trusting environment, fundamental to accompaniment is the sisters who are coming to consider our life. And that's what they're doing at the beginning is they're considering, is religious life in your community who God is calling them to be. So really, when we talk about accompaniment, you're being able to be with them. They need to trust you. Because fundamental to accompaniment is their willingness, their choosing to be self-disclosing. They're choosing to let you know who they are, what their questions are, what their difficulties are, what their joys are, what's working for them, how happy they are, because we're not just talking about they're going to talk to you about their difficulty. We want them to talk about their joys, their and how they're using their gifts. They need to trust you, and sisters, you need to trust them. You need to believe that they are there doing the best they can, and that they are a gift to us. They are God's gift to us, inviting us to become even better. And so I'm going to make some suggestions to build trust. And I think these can help the persons that you are accompanying to be more self-disclosing. And it's the only way that we can talk about authentically discerning vocation. Sisters, our newer members are discerning. Is this who God is calling them to be? And the only way we can help them with authentic discernment is if we know who they are. And so here are my suggestions. I think you remember, we're talking about you creating a trusting environment. The first thing is be true to your word and follow through with your actions. You cannot say one thing and do another. And it could be as simple as we will have class at 9 o'clock. And they're all sitting there waiting for you to come at 9 o'clock, and you come at 9:30. Now, you may think that's not too big of a problem, but sisters, you said you would begin class at 9 o'clock. Now, something could have happened that you're late, and so you tell them then. And you might apologize. I would apologize. I'm sorry for being late. But sisters, when you say something, your behavior has to agree with that. You want them to believe what you say. You want them to believe what you say. And so one of the things you really want to be careful with is making promises. You know, you have to be very careful about making promises that you really cannot keep. You know, I've had novices say to their novice director, their novice accompanier, I want to tell you something, but you can't tell anyone else. I want to share this with you, but you can't tell anyone else. Sisters, you can't make that promise. Now, they may tell you something about their past or something that happened that you don't need to share with anyone else. But sisters, do not make promises before you understand what they're going to share with you. You can't do that. Because if it's something that needs to be shared with someone else, now you've broken your promise. So, you know, be very mindful of saying things that are not possible. When you keep your word, you show others what you expect from them. If you keep your word, they will keep their word. If you do one thing, if you say one thing and do another, they also learn to say one thing and do something else. And so, really, they will be respectful of you if you are respectful of them. And remember that this is very important. Their learning to trust you takes time. Sisters, it's going to take time. We're going to talk about this again in our time together. I think it's tomorrow. No, it's later on when we talk about safety. You know, learning to trust somebody takes time. So we have to expect them at the very beginning, to be a little cautious, to be a little, well, you know, they're not going to say too much. That's probably healthy. The second thing says, learn how to communicate effectively. Sisters, poor communication is a cause of many, many difficulties. Poor communication causes more problems than not. And so you want to be as clear as you can be about what you're saying, and to be, and that you have committed to. So if you say, I am doing this, then you agree to that. You have to really be careful about agreements you make and then change. So one of the things that can be very helpful, this is a tool that you can use, is you can say to the sisters, when you share something, you can ask them, what did they understand? Sometimes I think I'm very clear. I say X and I think, well, I'm very clear. But it's not clear to them. So sometimes you say something that you really think is important. You can pause and say to them, am I clear? What do you understand that I'm asking? So we pause and we check in with them. I think, sisters, building trust is risky. Is risky. You're going to say, I'm going to trust them, even though I don't know them too well, that I'm going to believe that they are being the best they can be. So I'm going to trust them. I'm going to risk believing that they are being who they say they are. And so risking is part of this trusting behavior. You don't necessarily know for sure. But, a phrase that I like is, you give them the benefit of the doubt. You begin to say, I'm going to trust them. And then we see what happens. You may learn that trusting an individual or a group, it didn't happen the way you thought. Then you deal with that. But, there is a risk involved in trusting. And by the way, they are risking trusting you as well. You're risking trusting them, but they are risking trusting you as well, that you are who you say you are, that the community is who it says it is. I think the third thing is you need to remind yourself that it takes time. It takes time to earn trust. Notice the word I use, to earn trust. And so it's a daily task. And we're going to talk about some daily behaviors again. And so, sisters, I think we have to have realistic expectations about new members trusting us. They may not trust us fully immediately. Why should they? And I think this is what's really critical. The world they live in, there's a lot of betrayals of trust that they see around them. They see politicians, political leaders who are not trustworthy. Even in the church, we've seen some abusers, people who abused priests or who abused women or children, are not trustworthy. So the world around us has some real trust issues. So why should they trust us immediately and fully? So trust takes time. It's small steps, and it builds daily. And so, sisters, even as you interact with them, let me give you an example of how you earn trust. I think at the beginning, you ask questions that are not as demanding as you would ask 3 months later or 6 months later. As we try to get to know them, we ask questions that are not as personal, or that they can begin to let us know who they are. So, and even with their sharing with one another, they need to learn to trust one another. And, they can talk about what their favorite food is in a little easier way than they can talk about something that is more personal, more challenging. And so as we invite them to share who they are, we have to ask questions that gradually invite a deeper sharing. I think you have to take time to make decisions and think before you act too quickly. And a good example is, supposing the group says to you, let's have class outdoors today. It's warm. Let's go outside today. Well, you could say, sure, let's do that. But you may also realize that there's a lot of distractions outside. And so that moving the class outside may not be the best way for them to hear you and you to hear them. So sometimes you need to say, before you say, oh, they made a suggestion, I'll say yes, you need to pause a little and say, is that the best idea? So before you agree to something, and you may agree to go outdoors, it's very warm and you have a quiet place, so that maybe that's a good idea. So notice the flexibility there. So you're not always saying no, and you're not always saying yes. You have to have the courage to say no, even if it disappoints them. Life isn't always about yes. Sometimes we disappoint people, but you want to be open to saying yes. So it depends. Take time before you say yes. You don't have to spend hours thinking about it, but just be thoughtful. Or another thing that you can do is, let me think about that. Let me think about your request. I really want to think about that. So you take seriously what they ask, and then you say, let me think about that. So you're honoring their question, their suggestion, and you're thinking about it. It doesn't always need an immediate response. Sisters, I think you have to value the relationships that you have. That's that fifth point. You need people in your life that you can trust so that you are being your best self. Because you need to be consistent. If you're not consistent, they will not trust you. If they don't know who they're meeting today, like, how will she be today when she walks in the room? That is absolutely going to cause you serious difficulty. So this point 5 means this. You cannot be available 24 hours, 7 days a week. You cannot be available 24 hours, 7 days a week. You need to have a life. You need to have a life where you can be yourself. You need to have a life that is not always involved with your job, with your role. And you need to leave them some space where they can make decisions. And sometimes they'll make good decisions, and they might make a poor decision, and then you live with what happens. Sisters, do not make accompaniment your life. If you do, you will burn out. You will be difficult to deal with. And you won't be consistent. You won't be your best self. The 6th point says, you need to collaborate with others. You need to work with others. And we need to demonstrate working with others so that they learn to work with others as well. If in your community where you're living, you have other professed sisters, then you work with the other professed sisters. I'm not saying they become the accompanier. I'm just simply saying we share life together. We have to show them that we share life, that we're not always the one doing all the work, that we're not always the one in charge. We need to invite them to be in a relationship and to work with others. Otherwise, they won't do it. So are you open and willing to contribute to the life of the community, to do your part, to help out? You know, it's not they do the dishes and you never help with the dishes. It depends on the circumstance, you know, that we show that we're part here. We do with, we work with. You can't say something and not live it. Now, sisters, for those of you who have a pen and paper, I'd like you to write down 3 letters, 3 words, it's 3 letters of the alphabet. I'd like you to write down M, W, E, right next to one another. So it looks like one word, M, W, E. It looks like a word. Everybody got that in front of you? This is what we're trying to help ourselves and our newer members understand. MWE, M-W-E. How do we get those 3 letters? We get those 3 letters by putting together me plus we. Me plus we equals MWE. Me plus we. And sisters, what that little 3 letters is trying to invite you to remember, that when you personally are a person, that's the me, and that we live with others, that's the we. And so that no one does this life alone. And that you are called to live a life of MWE, being yourself and being in relationship with others. And that's what you're encouraging with accompaniment, that they be themselves, me, and be in relationship with others. And the word "and" is critical. It's never me, and it's never just we. It's me and we. And that's this whole journey of we live a relational life. So keep those 3 letters in mind. And you have to ask yourself, how am I doing? Are you not being a me? Is it always we? Or is it so that you're so into me that you forget there's a we? The 7th point says, be honest. You know, sisters, you might say, well, when are we not? But I think, you know, it's easy to kind of pretend, you know, and I'm talking about with yourself. You sort of say to yourself, oh, that was okay, when it really wasn't okay, when you really are disappointed, when you really are frustrated. So the first be honest is with yourself. Pay attention. I'm going to talk about your feelings coming up next. Be honest with yourself. Be truthful with yourself. Do not pretend that something is okay. Pretending never helps anything. And of course, it's sometimes it's not that we deliberately tell a lie. I would not believe that's true of any of us. But we can pretend, you know, we can say, oh yeah, it was all right. When the honest thing is, it wasn't all right. That wasn't okay. And I need to say that to myself and others. I think help people whenever you can. You know, you do have a role. You know, you are not their peer. You're not their equal. That's true. But, you know, you can help out. You can maybe help with after a big meal. There's a lot of dishes. You can help with the dishes. When they see us being a member of the community, it helps them be a member of the community. If we're always separate from, better than, we don't teach them much. Now, I'm not saying you do things for them so they don't have to do them. I'm not saying that. I'm saying, can you pitch in? When is it a good thing to get in there and roll up your sleeves? And when is it not? When is it for them to do? And when is it for you to be with? I think not hiding your feelings is really important. But this, sisters, this requires a lot more work and a lot more learning on your part and my part. There's three things when we talk about feelings. It's really important that you name what you feel. When I'm talking about your feelings, that you understand what the feeling is trying to tell you. And the third thing is that you express the feeling in a healthy, appropriate way. Let me say those three things again. And sisters, we have a lot of work to do here, because in some ways in religious life in the past, feelings didn't matter. If you were sad, you were told to get over it. If you were frustrated, you were maybe challenged. So we're now talking about feelings are a very important way to know and to be with. So you're working with your feelings are going to help you to help them work with their feelings. We do not want to ignore feelings or hide them. So let me say those three things. What do you do with feelings? Number one, you name what you feel. And you try to name it accurately, give the right name. So if you're sad, you want to say, I'm feeling sad today. This is your work. Then the second thing you want to ask is, what is my feeling trying to tell me? And if I'm feeling sad, remember I said I'm feeling sad. What is sadness trying to tell me? I'm dealing with some kind of loss. Sadness is connected with loss. I'm missing my family. My friend and I are having some difficulty, so I miss conversations with my family, with my friend. I miss my previous ministry. What am I feeling? Loss. What is the loss trying to tell me? It's telling me, what is the sadness trying to tell me? It's telling me I'm dealing with loss. I'm dealing with loss, not you, me. And then the third one, how to express my sadness in a healthy way. Sisters, we have a lot to learn here about the importance of feelings and naming them, understanding them, expressing in a healthy way. Let me give you an example of how with sadness, which is a very challenging feeling. Sometimes we take sadness and we turn it into anger. So instead of me staying with my sadness, I become angry or irritated with you. That's not helpful. So if I'm feeling sad and I'm accompanying someone, I want to make some time to stay with my sadness, to understand my sadness, to talk about my sadness with me, maybe with a spiritual director, and I'm not going to give it to the person I'm accompanying. Sisters, being emotionally intelligent is very important in trust. Knowing that my feelings are mine. Have you ever said to someone, or they said to you, she made me angry? I'm frustrated because of her. Not possible. My anger, my frustration belong to me. She might have said or did something, and I'm in relationship with her. But sisters, other people don't cause your feelings. So be aware of blaming or judging someone else for your feelings instead of doing your work. What am I feeling? What do I understand? And how am I going to express them in a healthy way? The final thing I'd like to talk about when we talk about feelings is, sisters, we need to be what I call emotionally agile. And what agility means is we can have more than one feeling, and we can adjust to the situation. And we need to teach our younger members this very important understanding. You know, I may be very sad today because of a loss of friendship or a loss of a person in my life, or I may be missing my previous ministry. It's okay to be sad. And today is a day of celebration. It's a community feast. So I need to learn how to take my sadness and just move it to the side and join in the celebration. And so I can be happy and joyful because of this feast day. And then later return to my sadness. Sisters, we need to be able to deal with more than one feeling. But this takes some real teaching and learning. This next one may sound a little strange. It says, do not self-promote. Sisters, you play an important role if you're in leadership, if you're in accompanying role. You need to know it's an important role. You don't need to tell others how important it is. You know, you need to hold your role lightly. You know, and you do need to know that you are important and that the community has trusted you with this role. But if you keep saying to yourself how important you are and keep asking people to see how important you are, you're not going to have a trusting relationship, because what you do is you keep separating yourselves. You keep saying to somebody you're better than they are. Now, what can help you here? I think if you genuinely appreciate others. Now, there's two words that go together there. Genuine appreciation. Now, let's say a couple of your newer members are prepared dinner for the group. And they did a pretty good job, you know? So you want to be able to appreciate, affirm that they did a good job. You don't want to miss the opportunity. Yes, it was their job, but we can say that we can appreciate a job well done. Genuine means you don't overdo it. You don't say, this is the best meal I've ever had in my entire life. But you do notice, and that's what this is, noticing, and when you can appreciate. If you never notice, it can come across as pretty self-centered or selfish. You know, I think gone are the days when, you know, it was your job and you do it and nobody said, well, somebody says, what was your job? What do you mean? Why should I appreciate that? We do need to appreciate people doing whatever they're doing. Genuinely. I think you need to do what you believe is right. Always. Again, I think sometimes because we seek approval or we want to be liked, and so we do or say something so people like us, so that the new candidates, the new novices, the temporary professed like us. Sisters, you're not there to be liked or to be disliked. I think in the past, some things were said and done that were harsh, that were cruel. You don't want to be disliked, but you're not there. You're not doing and saying something so people think you're wonderful. You're doing what you believe is right. And the sisters you accompany will respect your honesty. They will respect the fact that you are who you say you are. You're not doing things that are not, or you're not pretending. I think you have to be willing to upset others. You're not there to upset them, but by being honest, it may be upsetting. And you do this, by the way, on occasion. It's not your daily task. Every time you're in relationship with them, you upset them because, you know, I mean, that's a little much. Some days have to be good enough. Now, let me say that again. Some days have to be good enough. They're doing the best they can. Is it perfect? No. But sisters, our life is not a life of perfection. It's a life of trying. So can you let some days be good enough? They did the best they could. And they'll get better. You're not here to punish or to belittle. You're here to encourage. The last point on this page about trust is admit your own mistakes. You don't want to be dishonest, which goes back to the point up above. You know, if you come late to a meeting, we talked about that earlier. If you come late to a meeting or to a class, you come and you say, "Oh, I'm late. I'm sorry for being late." And if possible, you tell them why. I had an emergency phone call, and so you can't always say why, but you know, we're going to treat them as adults. They're not children. And what we do here is we teach them that life is not perfect, that we have to adjust, that you can be human so they can be human. You want them to see that you are more like them, that you are not perfect, that you can be vulnerable, you can make mistakes, and why is this last one important? Sisters, in my journey with newer members, and I've had the absolute privilege of walking with newer members in the US and internationally, not just the US sisters. Many of them do not feel they are good enough. Somehow they think the rest of us are good enough, but they are not enough. They do not see themselves as worthy. If they see us as that wonderfully human person, not perfect, on a journey of becoming better, they too can be on a journey of becoming better. Sisters, do not underestimate that they think themselves worthy, because many of them do not. And part of the reason is because of experiences they've had before they come to the community. Some of them have experienced traumatic experiences. Some of them have had less than perfect family life. And so, sisters, it's so important that if something happens and it doesn't go perfectly, that we talk about it. And we may say, I'm sorry about being late because. If you have to be perfect, they have to be perfect. You'll never know who they really are. And so I'd like to look at this last section about trustworthy and untrustworthy. Sisters, there's two parts to the trust relationship. You want the new members to trust you, and you need to be trustworthy. So let's look at that. They trust you if you are trustworthy. Everybody got it? So trustworthy is how you need to be if they're going to trust you. And it's in reverse. They need to be trustworthy if you're going to trust them. So what does trustworthy look like? I wrote down 5 things, a little bit of a repetition, but sometimes we need to hear repetition. You ready for the first one? That you communicate clearly. Sisters, poor communication creates problems. So when you're talking to them as a group or individually, prepare what you're going to say. Reflect on what you're trying to accomplish. Take time to, organize your thinking so that you can share with them. So clarity, prepare, reflect, take time. Notice it says responsibility. You need to be able to respond to them in the moment. You can say, let me think about that. I don't mean you have to always immediately, but you have to be able to respond and not be overly cautious. Oh, I need to think about that, Sometimes we can think in their presence. Sometimes we take a risk. You can't be overly cautious. At the same time, you don't want to be blurting out things that you don't mean. So have the ability to respond in the moment or by taking time. Adjustability. Can you adjust? Is there more than one way to look at something? Sisters, the world we live in is quite complex. There's lots of changes happening. We need to be flexible. That doesn't mean wishy-washy. It doesn't mean you don't have some standards or belief. But, sisters, we need to be able to adjust. Notice it says that you value and identify with trustworthy. Well, all that means is you realize it's very important to be trustworthy, to be consistent, to be who you say you are. And every single day, in every interaction, you are who you say you are. You can't play around with this. You have to believe it is important that you be who you say you are, and you do that every day. And then finally, it's part of that is consistent. If I'm if you're accompanying me, I need to count on you. I don't need to guess who you will be today. You're going to be your best self as every day as you can. They should not guess, is she talking to us today? Is she angry with us today? Is she frustrated with us today? Is she silent today? They don't want to be guessing. Think about yourself when you've had to guess. It's very anxiety producing. Untrustworthy. So what is the opposite of the behaviors? These are the things you don't want to do. You want to try to get these out of your life. And they're easy to get, blaming, judging. Look at that, taking offense easily. Let me give you an example. Supposing you think you're very clear, and one of the candidates or novices says, I don't understand. Don't take offense. You might have been as clear as possible. They just didn't hear it. So stay in the moment. Don't take offense if somebody says, I don't understand. They don't understand. Better that they be honest with you than pretend. You're irresponsible. You don't do what you say, but you want them to be responsible. Doesn't work. You keep secrets. It's really important that they know what you think and expect. Let me say that again. It's really important that they know what you think and what you expect. Sisters, there should be no surprises on this journey. If somebody is not doing well, you have some serious questions about them, they should know you have serious questions. They don't come in one day and say, we're asking you to go home, and it's a total surprise. No surprises. How unjust and unfair to surprise somebody. Be fearful of openness. You don't want to be fearful of openness. Really, you don't worry. Fear and worry. Live in the moment. You're a capable person. You can live in that moment and hear what they have to say. You'll figure out how to respond. Don't be overly critical. I think sometimes in the past, I think novice directors, thought that their job was to criticize. It's not very helpful. You do need to be critical, and you do need to give constructive criticism, but it can't be every day the only thing you do. When do you affirm? When do you support? Have conditional self-esteem. I'm talking about you. That you don't like yourself enough, you don't trust yourself enough. And so you're always, I don't know who I'm meeting, you have to like yourself enough. You're in that job because you have the qualities that are needed. When your words and actions don't meet, when you say and you don't do, you say to them, do what I say, but you don't do it. You can't live like that and expect them to trust you. These last two go together. You don't trust yourself, and therefore you don't trust others. And what I'm really talking about here is somehow in your journey, you learned not to trust people. You have a habit of not trusting. And so you see others as untrustworthy. It's a mindset. Sisters, if you've had your trust violated in the past, do something to heal that, so that when you're in relationship in these accompanying roles, you don't start with not trusting. You start with trusting. And so, a couple of questions. When you look at these suggestions, what do you do well? I'm sure there are things on my list that you already do. And so you want to say, okay, I do that pretty well, and I'm going to keep doing that. And then you ask yourself, is there one or two of them that I could be better at? That I could be better at? That I'm being challenged, that God is saying to me today, get better at this. So we'll pause for just a moment there. How am I doing? Trusting, being trustworthy. What am I good at and I want to keep doing? Where am I challenged? How do I want to be better? Sisters, you're on a journey of becoming your best self. And so are the women you accompany. So we have one more part today. And it's some newer understandings and learning. And sisters, what's really interesting about this whole question of psychological safety is it's a very important topic in business, in institutions of learning. And so we are bringing into our life something that the whole world is dealing with. And I think, I think sometimes we get too small a focus. We think, oh, this is only a religious life issue. This is a world issue, psychological safety, and how to create a psychologically safe place to do what? That empowers new members to be themselves. So this is a world issue, and we're going to talk about it because it's so important for us to deal with this. So what are we talking about here? Sisters, we want our new members to be themselves. We don't want them to imitate you or somebody else they admire. We want them to be themselves. We want them, the word empower is really to help them be powerful women. They are going to face a world that is very challenging, very demanding, a world that is changing, that is chaotic, that is unjust, a climate that is, that we're need for adjusting to climate and to preserving the earth. These are huge challenges. We need them to be themselves, and they are going to live beyond us. So psychological safety is really a belief. The person who feels psychologically safety believes, I will not be punished or humiliated for being myself, for speaking up, for giving ideas, for asking questions, for expressing my concerns or my doubts, or when I make a mistake. Listen to that list. You will feel psychologically safe. Other people will feel psychologically safe when they can speak up, when they can share their ideas, when they can ask their questions, when they can say, I'm concerned, or I don't understand, or when they make a mistake. It is critical for them to be able to do that and for you to be able to give and receive feedback for self-disclosure and discernment. Sisters, if we don't know who they are, how can you say that they fit and they belong in the community? So discerning requires self-disclosure. We have to have an environment where they can say and be all of who they are without judgment and with respect. Now, in order to feel safe, there are stages of becoming safe. And you and I, it's our job to let the stages happen. So let's start with inclusion. You know, when we talk about we include, and let's talk about women from different cultures, women from different backgrounds, women from different tribal families. The word inclusion is the word, to be included means they're there. That doesn't necessarily mean safety is they there. So inclusion is sort of inviting them to be there. And the first step is they are accepted for who they are. So your first thing is, how am I accepting of who they are? They don't look alike. They don't think alike. They don't dress the same. They don't like the same foods. So acceptance is the very beginning of this journey of safety. So inclusion, just because they're there in your house, doesn't mean that they feel safe. You had to do something. So we start with that accepting. Then there's another level of safety where they're open to learning. And so they feel safe to ask questions. They can give feedback. I didn't like that, or I don't understand that, or that really helped me, or that didn't help me. They're willing to experiment, and they can make mistakes without being punished or thrown out the door. So notice there's a give and take here. There's a back and forth here. But it's a deeper level than they're just sitting in the room, keeping their mouth shut. And then we talk about the ability to contribute. Feeling safe enough that they can make a difference. They can make a contribution. And so they offer a different perspective. They might say, sister, what if we did this? Or could we change the time? You know, sometimes my experience has been that some of the communities, the communities of accompaniment, the schedule is too tight, it's too tight, it's too rigid. And you have somebody who has the courage to say, could we have a little bit more time? If you hear that, if they have the courage and they're willing to risk to contribute to having their life be a little bit easier so they can participate, are we willing to hear them? Or have we set the schedule and it's the right way? Let me say one thing that I haven't said earlier, but I will say it now. Sisters, in many, many ways, there is no right way. There is a way to do something. So if you think there's a right way, then other ways are wrong. Sisters, there are many options today. Some are better than others, for sure. So now they're there, they're learning, they're open, they're contributing, and now they feel safe enough to speak up and challenge. they believe this could be better. They could be better. Are we willing to hear them from the earliest stages on? When they make a suggestion, can we hear it? And can we not be so offended? But can we be open to the possibility? When they ask why, can we hear it? Not as a threat, but as an invitation. This takes you and I being mature women who want them to be their selves because God has sent them to us to become their best self, not to imitate who we are. And so we want to talk about how to create a psychologically safe environment. It starts with you. You have to be very self-aware. You need to recognize what you prefer to have things, what you think and behave. And just because you prefer it doesn't mean it's right. So if somebody says, could we do this instead? You have to be willing to at least consider it. You have to know yourself. You have to know your own biases, your own preferences. And it may be that you continue, you say, you know, you're aware, I prefer this. I think this is the best way, and we do it. But it doesn't mean you're never open to considering something else. There's more than one way. I think you have to demonstrate concern and interest in them as individuals. You know, sisters, let's say you have 4 or 5 of them. If you're blessed with 4 or 5, you have to spend time with each one, getting to know her, getting to help her join, become part of the group. You have to start with simple questions to get to know her, and then they get deeper. The third thing says solicit questions and different viewpoints. You have to, after you present something or share something, you have to give them an opportunity to ask questions. And sometimes they need time to ask the questions. You know, I think, you know, we say something in a class kind of thing, and then you say, any questions? And then we go on. You might say, I'd like you to think about this. And when we come back together, I'd like to hear some questions or how you understand. So give them some space. I think you do this, but I'm saying it anyway. You have to give multiple ways for them to tell us who they are. Multiple ways for individuals to share, to tell us who they are. You know, you in meetings where the group is gathered, you might go around the group and say, and what did you think? And what did you hear, etc. So we have group meetings. You ask them to reflect in writing. You give them some questions and ask them to write the answers. Now you might say, why do we ask them to write the answers? Because it gets them to get it out of themselves and they get to express in their own words. One-to-one sharing, I'm sure you have individual meetings, which is a good thing. I think you need to, we already talked about this, appreciate and value their ideas. Even if they're kind of very different, or maybe something you would never consider. But you know, if we let go of judgment and we hear possibilities, then we understand where they're coming from and they feel safe. And sisters, if you don't hear anything else on this, be grateful. Gratitude changes our interaction with others. Be grateful. Thank them for contributing their ideas. Some of their suggestions will be better than others, but you just thank them all, knowing that some of the ideas it's not time for, it's not a good idea, but at least they're willing to tell you. So in other words, they're contributing, which says they're at a deeper level of feeling safe. And you help make that happen. You be careful, be clear with your own information and your expectations and your commitments. Again, these are trusting behaviors. Be clear. Tell them what you expect. Be reasonable. And commit. If you say something, then do it. If you need to change what you said, then tell them. This is a change. We're not going to be able to do the outing tomorrow because and when you say no or change, if you can, you tell them why. These are mature, thinking, feeling human persons. They need to know why at times. Now, sometimes we can't say why. Explaining the reasons for change, why or why not. Sisters, they deserve to know. Now, sometimes we can't always express why, and we say, there is a change today. I'm not able to talk about why, but we're going to, If you make mistakes, notice we're repeating some of the trusting behaviors. If you make mistakes, you need to apologize. Perfection is not the end goal, being human is. Sisters, keep that in mind. Perfection is not the end goal, being human is. Can good enough be good enough? You have to really ask that of yourself. Can good enough be good enough? And then finally, can you help them manage conflict? Conflict is inevitable. You're not bad or you didn't do anything wrong when conflict happens. It's inevitable. We need to help conflict be manageable. I didn't say avoid it. It's manage it. And so that it isn't destructive. They're going to have conflict with each other. They may have a conflict with you. They may have a conflict with expectation. Conflict is part of life. If we don't help them in these beginning stages, how in the world are they going to deal with a world that's in conflict? So think bigger than just the small amount of time you have with them. You're preparing them for life as a woman religious, committed to the gospel, committed to justice, and conflict is going to be part of their journey. And when I talk about hope, you're going to see the importance of how hope is connected to conflict. So, how to create a psychologically safe environment so that you empower, you help them become their best self, not imitating anybody else. So how to help them move through the stages of feeling safe. How are you behaving? And it's important to be realistic and reasonable in your expectations. So what do you want to take with you? If I said to you as we end our time together here, what's one thing that really stands out for you? You might put it in the chat, but at least you know. What's one thing that really stands out from you about our conversation this morning? What's one thing? Mm.
Lynn, thank you so much. Just on the clock. Yeah, there's no words. I don't want to add too many more words. There's lots of thank yous in the chat, and as well the main ideas that have touched each one. I'd like to thank you for inviting us, most of all, to be mature women. I think that's the major thing, being consecrated life or not. We are called, created by God, to be the best of ourselves. You repeated it so many times, and I think that's the biggest gift we have from God, and as well the biggest responsibility we have to give to each other, to love ourselves, to allow ourselves to be loved, so that we can give others the best that God has given us. And I think you've done it in such an amazing way. And you've been faithful to your title, a toolkit to accompany new members, I think to accompany anyone to mature in relationships. So thank you so much. So tomorrow we will meet at the same time. There will be some more things that Lynn will share with us, and I would like to be a little bit of a spoiler. So Lynn will share with us on communication matters, will give us as well some tools for listening and questioning as companions that want and are willing to listen. Some insights on intercultural communication, because there are many barriers that sometimes are among ourselves because of our different cultures. And as she said, she will speak about hope. How can be a hope-filled person and a hope provider. So I will be sending you between today and tomorrow the handout that Lynn has shared with us. As well on the YouTube, you will find the video for today. I've sent you the link over the email. It will be there for a couple of days, and then we'll send you again the link. And see you tomorrow. Thank you so much for being with us. I invite you to unmute yourselves, and we can all say goodbye and thank you to Lynn, and see you tomorrow. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.